Okay, in this video what I want to do is discuss consistency as it relates to variety. Because there seems to be some confusion as to whether or not consistency and variety can coexist within a training program. And I get a lot of questions asked about this because I'm one of those guys who's often telling you to be consistent, work hard with the basics, don't stray too far from the fundamentals and stop trying to reinvent the wheel. And what I mean by that is, look, regardless of what you are training for, there are exercises and methods that have already stood the test of time. They've proven beneficial to today's athletes, just as they were beneficial to athletes in previous generations, and just as they will continue to benefit athletes in future generations. So you never really need to stray too far from those movements. As long as you work hard and remain consistent, you are typically going to do pretty well. And you won't find too many people who disagree with that basic idea. The problem, though, is that while I'm preaching the importance of consistency, there are other trainers with good intentions who are preaching the importance of variety. So variety is often suggested as a way to break up the monotony of your training, to avoid physical and mental burnout, and to avoid being stuck in a plateau, all valid points. The problem, though, is that a lot of people misinterpret what it means to include variety. So they might read a recommendation that says to include variety of 4 to 6 weeks and misinterpret that to mean taking out a wrecking ball and knocking everything down. So they work hard for 4 to 6 weeks, and then they abandon that work entirely and hop onto a new program. These people find themselves in this constant cycle of hopping from program to program to program. And they become frustrated because they never make any meaningful progress. But they fail to realize that it's because they never stick with an idea or program long enough to realize its true benefits. And that's a huge mistake. Using myself as an example, there are exercises and methods that I've used for 20 plus years now. I have never felt the need to leave a movement behind simply because I've worked with it for a certain amount of time. In my eyes, if it works, I'm going to continue to use it. The key, though, is that I include subtle forms of variety with those movements, so I can keep things fresh, but still remain consistent with those exercises and methods that have proven most beneficial. So what I'm doing in this video is share 3 simple ways that you can include variety without abandoning those core movements and methods that have proven most beneficial to your training. Okay, one of my favorite ways to introduce variety is by simply changing my scenery, surrounding myself with different sights and sounds. And for me, that often means heading outside to train. If you have followed this channel, you've likely seen me training out in the woods, training in the snow, training at a local park. Now, a lot of people see that footage, though, and they write to me and say, why not just do that inside? But those who make those comments fail to realize that training isn't just physical. There is a significant mental aspect as well. And knowing myself, I know that if I continually perform the same work over and over and over again in the same place, I am going to get bored. So one of the ways that I prevent that is by changing my scenery. I head outside. The push-ups that I perform outdoors might appear identical to those that I perform inside, but there's actually a considerable difference. I'm able to keep things fresh and interesting by changing where I'm performing those push-ups, which ultimately allows me to perform more and better work. And look, changing scenery isn't always a case of going from inside to out. If you're a runner, for example, one of the ways that you can include variety is by changing where you run. Run a different course, different route. Using myself as an example, hill sprints have long been one of my favorite conditioning activities. Again, though, I know that if I constantly run the same hill, I'm eventually going to get bored. So I prevent that by running different hills. Sometimes we run in the woods, sometimes at a local park, sometimes on the road. Physically, each of the hills are similar, but again, by changing my scenery, I keep things fresh and interesting and ultimately perform better work. So look, mix it up on occasion. Change where you train. And if you never get outside, try heading outdoors. You'll be surprised at how energized you feel by exercising outside, breathing in some fresh air, and enjoying the world around you. Okay, another simple way to include variety is by varying how we perform certain movements. Introducing subtle forms of variety with those movements that already exist within our routine. Think of the pull-up bar as a prime example. There are countless ways that you can perform pull-ups. Think about how many ways we can change where we grip the bar, how we grip the bar, pull-ups versus chin-ups versus neutral grip. We can add an implement to the bar, towel pull-ups, rope pull-ups, thick grip pull-ups. There are countless options. We can shift gears away from the bar, work from gymnastic rings. Again, same basic exercise, but we introduce variety by changing how we perform that exercise. And obviously, that idea extends far beyond the pull-up bar. You can include variety in countless exercises. When I look at my own routine, I vary just about everything I do without shifting too far from those core fundamental movements. I work with different varieties of push-ups, different varieties of rollouts. I vary how I lift weights. If I work with heavy dumbbells, I might shift gears and work with heavy barbells or vice versa. If I deadlift barbells, I might shift gears and deadlift a trap bar. Or I might add a challenge to an existing lift. I like to perform heavy bent over rows. Well, I might mix it up by adding a thick grip to that exercise. Same movement, but I have shifted the focus slightly towards my hands and grip. So again, I'm not forced to constantly reinvent the wheel. I introduce variety with those movements that I already perform. And this is something that's not specific to bodyweight exercise or free weights. It applies to conditioning as well. Another one of my favorite conditioners is the jump rope. But again, I'm not going to constantly skip rope the same way. I introduce variety by changing how I skip rope. Double unders, triple unders, crisscross, sprint in place. Same movement, different variations. So look, long before you go out seeking brand new exercises and tools, start by examining your existing workload. See what options exist in terms of adding variety, subtle forms to your current workload. Okay, another way that we introduce variety is by altering how we perform a movement. So we're not actually changing the exercise, but rather modifying one of the variables related to that movement. For example, sets, reps, load, rest between sets. Oftentimes, the best rep range for you is the rep range that you haven't worked with in a while. So for example, suppose you have been lifting heavy weights for low reps. One way to introduce variety is by working against a slightly more moderate rep range. It doesn't mean that you're not working just as hard, you're just applying yourself to a different load, thus a different rep range. Or for another example, suppose you've been performing a lot of body weight pull-ups and you want to introduce some variety. Well, one way to do so is to perform the same pull-up, but add some weight with a weighted vest or a dip belt. By altering the load, you're also going to alter your rep range. Again, same movement, but you're introducing variety by changing a variable related to that movement. And look, this is not something that is specific to strength training. Same ideas can be applied to conditioning. Going back to the jump rope, another way that I introduce variety with the rope is by changing how long I skip rope. So I might skip continuously for 20 minutes, I might skip for timed rounds, say 3 minutes, or I might skip rope at an all-out pace, say 30 seconds, sprint in place. So again, I'm altering a variable or variables related to the movement. Duration, volume, intensity. So look, variety isn't always a case of working with different variations, but rather changing how we perform the same movements. Okay, to wrap things up, clearly consistency and variety can coexist. You don't need to pick between one and the other. And look, through this video, I'm not suggesting that you can't ever seek out new exercises, new tools, or new programs. The point is that the need to do so rarely exists. Plenty can be done with those movements that have already proven to be beneficial. You can include subtle forms of variety that will allow you to remain consistent, rather than constantly feeling the need to reinvent the wheel. So in summary, if you have any questions about this or anything else, as always, shoot me an email at ross@rosstraining.com.